Hello,
Hi.
Anusha. Oh. Hello, Anusha. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, good. Good.
Um, I figured out how to mute it, remember?
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I have a bit of a, cold this morning. The weather completely flipped on us.
Oh,
80
yeah.
yesterday, 50, 80 the day before, 50 yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cold out.
You're in Illinois, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
So
Yeah.
it's a very similar situation here. So
Okay. Have you lived in the Midwest all your life, or?
I've lived in the Midwest. I've also lived in Florida. So
Oh, okay.
I
Gotcha.
talked about that last week, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So nice to hear that you're doing good. And
Yeah.
is that Jesse?
Yes,
Yeah, it is.
hello.
Hello.
Hi, Jesse.
Morning, all. How are you?
Good. I'm doing
Good.
well.
I don't know if you can hear the, I have a bit of background noise because it's raining kind of hard right now, so I don't know if you can hear that in the background.
Maybe a little bit sounds like white noise.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so good. Well, welcome to the meeting. So I don't know if Anusha is going to present anything today or not, or...
Yeah, I am.
Okay,
It won't take very long, but
okay,
yeah, I
well,
have like 2 papers.
okay, that's good. We can do that in a little bit. Usually we do a Slack review and then we do reports from people, so you can do it then, and we'll get into that. So I wanted to... I don't know who else is going to show up, but people come in and out of the meeting, so that's fine. But I'll start the Slack review, so you can see my screen.
I don't think Angela will be here today, given, I think she has something else she needs to attend to.
Okay.
Erin said she might show up, but I haven't heard from her yet, so she might show up a little bit later.
Okay.
And I have talked to Anson a lot, but he may not be available yet. But he is, there's always, just like for a lot of things, people who aren't always in the meeting aren't necessarily, they're still doing things, even if they're not here. So just figured I'd mention those few in specific. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We have a large asynchronous contingent, so if you're doing work in the Slack channels, which we'll talk about now, and you're not, usually come to the meetings, it's okay. Feel free to comment on the meetings if you watch them on YouTube as well. So this is our lab Slack, and we have the Anson project channel, which more to come here later. So I guess, I hear that Anson's getting back into the swing of things, and it's good. We also have the bioevolution channel, nothing new there. Brain networks and NetSci, nothing new there, but this is for the NetSci conference in late June, early July. We'll be putting more things in here for the different satellites and the main conference. Brain organoids has been quiet for a while. Bradenburg vehicles has been likewise quiet. Just looking for new things here. If we have anything. I think Cognition Futures had a few things. So, Cognition Futures, we had... so we had this... this was our session to Cogside. So we submitted a discussion group to the Cogside conference, and we got accepted. This is on Trajectories in Cognitive Science. So this is basically the cognitive futures, that sort of thing. And we're going to have to come up with some sort of... It's, I think, a 90-minute event. So we need to program for 90 minutes. And this is the accept. I don't think the whole acceptance email is here, but like I basically cut and pasted the first line. And so if you're interested in participating in that, we'll talk more about that later. Or in fact, actually, we talk about it now. I have it pulled up. So these are the affinity and discussion groups for the Cogside conference.
And this is, I believe, happening in late June, late July.
Late July, like
Yeah.
the 25th, 26th of July. So as you can see, there are a number of sessions. There's an international group. There's future faculty, women in cognitive science, the new human, which is, I don't know, looks interesting. But that's, this group advances diversity and inclusivity within cognitive science. Trajectories in cognitive science, that's ours.
That looks really cool, that one right there, yeah.
Which one, the new human?
No, I'm self-congratulating.
Oh, okay. Trajectories, yes. It looks cool. I've never seen this before, so we'll have
I
to check
had
it
just
out.
a small description for that compared to the others. So I might flesh out the description a bit more. But yeah, I didn't know if it's going to be. They said it's going to be it's going to go 90 minutes. That's cool. Like there's a lot. I'm already quite excited because there's a lot of it's quite easy for us to talk here for 2 hours. So having a little more structure and a little integration of fun things, and even some other things that I'll mention later today. It sounds exciting to be able to have that much time in an event like that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to. So I talked to the organizers, and they said that we can have we can have people come from outside the conference, but also have people come from inside the conference. So I have 3 complimentary passes to the conference. So I think I forwarded Jesse the email. If not, let me know and I'll send it. So I imagine Anson will want to be there, and Jesse and myself. So you just register for like $0 and complimentary. And I don't know if there's a code, but that's going to be, so that'll be for the organizers. And then if you want to attend this and you're not going to the Cogside conference, we will be running this on Jitsi just as we run our regular meetings. So you can join in, and I'll send out the details. And if you want to contribute something, let us know. If you decide, oh, that's really cool, I want to participate, maybe we'll do very short presentations where people just come up with a topic or maybe some idea and do a very brief overview, or maybe we'll do something like we definitely want to start with an introduction to the idea. That's usually a good way to start these things, to anchor it. And then beyond that, we want to have discussion, but just throwing the floor open isn't necessarily a great strategy. So we want to have we want to engage people, but we want to plan the content out so that there aren't a lot of lags and people don't know what they want to do, and we need to really kind of get that kind of tight. So we'll be talking about that, how to do that in the next several weeks. And then finally, go ahead, Jesse.
Oh no, I'm just agreeing with that. I don't have much more to say than that.
Okay. And so then finally there's this neural networks and cognition. James McClelland is presenting on that. Yes. Cool. So they have their time set out. So they'll be doing this. They're going to be doing theirs in GatherTown. So that's if you're not familiar with GatherTown, it's a virtual environment. I don't know if maybe it's something we can use for ours, but I don't know. It might be better than Jitsi, it might not be. We might use this actually as sort of a rough outline too. It looks like they have they have a discussion, breakout sessions, but this is for something that everyone knows what it is. For trajectories, no, people really don't know what trajectories are. So we need to really kind of do a an introductory presentation of the idea. So, and then this is the thing that we need to update for the Cogside conference. This is, I know I mentioned this to Jesse in Slack. but this is out of date. We have
Yeah, it hasn't been updated since last year, and I that will be updated for sure.
Yeah. And we have a lot of good content. We have like the EI workshop, and we have this Cogside workshop.
Well, we have Princeton and Vision that needs to be on there. We have Anusha can be on the people list too, and maybe some other people in the lab. There's I mean, there's. I'm gonna have to figure out one thing. I'm gonna figure out. Thinking about this website is any potential crossover from one of my most recent endeavors that I'm partaking in, which it won't like become I'm not going to change that website, but more like how am I going to address some of my own like affiliations that are developing? So that's something to think about too. But as far as just general update to the website, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there, and I remember people asking me after Princeton and Vision, and then immediately after Princeton and Vision was this very interesting time period that's kind of coming to a close now, actually. So suffice to say, the webpage will need to be updated, and I'm very curious to see. I'm up for input from it about it as well. Like I'll be asking Anson and Anusha, and obviously Bradly, what you would like to see for that. I think what I'm going to do is convert it maybe to similar to my. I have some ideas for the like actual just the back end of how I'm going to be arranging things in. I may change some of its infrastructure and design, but the content needs an update as well. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll do that. We'll do that definitely before the session. So, but yeah, it's always good to keep things updated, and I know it's like hard to keep things updated, but
Actually, I think I'll commemorate this by saying this website here. This is my first ever like pseudo-academic website that has become outdated. And that's kind of like a milestone as an academic. You're supposed to have these outdated websites or like pictures of you from like 15, 20 years ago that don't really look like you. Like that's the hallmark of academic progress, I think. So
yeah,
that's a tongue-in-cheek self reference there, but yes.
yeah. Not sure aging 20 years is considered progress, but well, maybe sometimes. But so yeah, that's good. Definitely, we'll revisit this. So let's go back to the Slack. So the cognition futures, and then collaborations, conference materials, cybernetics. I'm not seeing a lot that's new. Wait a minute, is that new? Yeah, it is. Okay, so Dev AI has some new content. We have this here is a paper from Developmental Science about caregiving instability and associated with diminished inhibitory control but enhanced task switching. And then we have this book, Cognitive Biology, that was published in 2009, but it's just like a new book or a book that someone discovered. So they have the Stephen Jay Gould books here, which are thick, these over here, which are thinner, and then this book here, which is not Stephen Jay Gould, but it's a book on developmental perspectives on mind, brain, and behavior. So then in Devo Worm Orthogonal, which is something that hasn't been updated in a long time, this is something that I'm going to talk about on Monday more in the other meeting, but the 10th anniversary of OpenWorm is coming up. So if you're not familiar with the OpenWorm Foundation, this is a group of people who are devoted to modeling C. elegans and creating sort of like a digital worm. So every aspect of the worm, from behavior to the neurobiology to the cellular development. We can characterize every cell in the organism. It's what they call eutelic, which means it always has the same number of cells. Unless you're talking about a mutant, we know the connectome very well, and we have a good account of the developmental lineage tree. So we know all that stuff, and that makes for the perfect candidate for this type of endeavor. And so looking back over the history this last week, went back, and there's a page in the OpenWorm docs which has the history, and discovered that I think someone asked about this in the OpenWorm Slack. When is the 10th anniversary? And I thought we had missed it, but actually we didn't. So back in 2010, Stephen Larson, who's one of the organizers of OpenWorm, and then Giovanni Adili, who's another person who has been a senior contributor in the organization, they put out a call for this initiative. They're like, we want to do this thing, we want to simulate the worm. Do we have takers for this? And so, but they really didn't get rolling until about 2011. They met the people in Siberia who were working on cyber elegans. These guys were working on like a biophysical model of the worm, and so they joined. And then there were some other, of course, Giovanni works on Geppetto and some other projects, so he joined in. And Stephen Larson, who's very good at like getting motivating people to do things and getting people in line, and he does a lot of neuroinformatics stuff. He joined in too, and so then in September 2011 there was this OpenWorm Release 1, and that's what we're maybe using for the 10th anniversary milestone. So it's very cool work, and it's all 10 years old now. So talk about aging. There was a burst of activity at the beginning. I joined the initiative in 2014, actually, myself. There was a lot of activity in the first maybe 3 or 4 years, and it kind of tailed off a little bit. And then, we've been doing things like open houses, and we had a conference in London in 2018. So, things are still going. If people are wondering, what happened to OpenWorm, it's still going. People are still doing things. It's shifted a bit from these early days, but definitely maybe this needs like maybe a little bit longer history of it. Maybe there's going to be a paper that comes out of this, is what I'm saying. I'm not really sure yet, but it's definitely something to kind of, maybe rejuvenate some of the public interest in the project. Because I think now it's like people say OpenWorm and people think, well, it's, the simulation thing, it's kind of almost like the singularity. It's like, oh, we can do all these great things, or maybe it's dead. We don't really know. It really is like Schrodinger's worm, in the sense that it's like you don't know what state it's in, and it's maybe in all states at once. I don't know. So that's that. I don't think there's anything in here. Ethics and tech always is stuff. So let's see. We started the week, okay, 22nd maybe. This was from last week's meeting, more or less. Wednesday, there was Jesse posted a paper, a flawed data set for symbolic equation verification. And then he posted this gradient article towards human-centered explainable AI. So disclosure, I'm an editor at the Gradient, so I do this work. I didn't work on this article, but I do sometimes edit articles. There's this article on human-centered explainable AI, which is something that is, maybe not in the direction of typical machine learning, but we will talk about this later, how there is this area of sort of AI, but also having a human component, the sort of human-computer interaction type AI. So this is a good article to read. There's this other thing here that I posted about. I don't want to say too much about this, but this is something I've been looking at recently. This had something to do with the ACM SIGCHI conference, which we talked about before. This was another talk at that conference. Everyone wants to do the model work, but not the data work. This is about data cascades in high-stakes AI. This is a really interesting talk. I think it got a finalist position in the conference. So this is like basically the idea is that every step of like a data analysis, if you have like big data, you mine it, you create a model, you analyze the model, and then you make statements about what the model finds. At each of those steps, you can introduce error. And when you introduce error at each step, unless you correct it, it propagates and compounds down the pipeline. So, for example, if I have noisy data or bad data that I don't clean in advance, then the errors in the data set will propagate through the analysis and through the interpretation. If my model is not suited for what I'm doing, that error comes later in the pipeline, but it still compounds to the next step, which is the analysis, and then the further step, which is the interpretation. So, you get these data cascades, which are actually pretty abundant. They don't really talk a lot about that in the paper. But, and there's a paper, like if you go to the Chi papers, they're open, you search for this, whatever the title is. I think this is the actual title of the paper. So if you watch the video and you search for the paper, you find the paper and read it. I'm not sure how much they go into some of the sort of the prevalence of it, but it's something that, of course, probably is ubiquitous across AI and ML. So it's something to think about. It's definitely, I think, a good topic. They might be doing an article for the Gradient, but they definitely have this paper at SIGCHI. So this is, and then Jesse put this link here, digithics.org. I know someone who works under this group in general. I wonder if down the road we could do a spot on their Tech Ethics podcast somehow. So yeah, that would be a good idea. We could do, I don't know if we'd have to come up with a good set of sort of, one of the things that is really attractive, I think, for like podcasts and stuff, is to have like a sort of an identity or a theme that you're going to focus on. So, people can shoot the breeze in these things quite effectively. But, it'd be nice if we had like a sort of a thing that we were well known for, or something that we add to the discussion that's uniquely us. I think that's
yeah.
To
that end, when after things settle down, which is kind of code for essentially next week, and then a little bit after the following week, I think it may be time to have a specific website component for the ethics team somewhere. Like it's kind of mentioned in like my website, and it's on GitHub, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's like vaguely mentioned on the main page for orthogonal, but I think it might be helpful to have a little bit of a, even like a very simple page, less complex than Cognition Futures, probably, but I think that might help as well, just so people, because it's a lot of people come and ask me about it, and I don't really have a place to point them that's too great right now, but I think that'll help. But specifically about the podcast, yeah, I don't know. Probably only Bradley would know. Maybe not even. You might have forgotten this, but like a colleague of mine, Rachel Bacon, is actually at that I think it's for something for like Center for Mind and Culture, and she doesn't work on the podcast directly, but she's like leading a research team there at the institution or organization, and she's actually, her specialty is like demography and actually religious demography, so it's a little bit not quite the same as what we do, but between that, she mentioned the podcast to me, because the same group is essentially putting on that event, and the group that she's a researcher at is doing that event. So maybe there's a way to combine some of those things down the road, or at least have an in to communicate with them there.
Yeah.
And that's always exciting to think about.
Yeah, actually, in terms of what we have for the ethics and so we have like a GitHub stub here. Let's see what the current state is. Here it is.
I haven't touched it.
So yeah, this is basically it here. I know this is, yeah, it's again out of date, and these things get out of date, especially when you're doing a lot of stuff, which is good. But yeah, I think this might be a little bit. But I mean, what I was talking about in terms of a specific voice is like, what is it that we would be known for if someone mentioned this project and they can identify what it is that they can take away from it? Like, I know I should be the last person to talk about that because a lot of the projects I run are very diverse and eclectic, but I mean, there's always like a common theme that sort of emerges, and it's something that other people don't do. So even if it's like really all over the place, what is it that we want to do that's like sort of unique, no one else is doing? Is there something really unique and something we could add to the literature, for example, or something people would say, oh, I know nothing about that. We need to really go to this talk because I'll never learn anything else. Yeah, I can't learn this anywhere else. So yeah, we have like some focus areas, but I guess, and this goes to everyone in the group, whether you're in this project or not. You know, if you've engaged with this project, or even if you're just reading it as a person who doesn't know much about it, what stands out to you is something unique or something interesting that really is, motivating. That would make you go to a talk. If the talk were on that topic. So I want people to think about that, because I think that's a good exercise for kind of, finding this sort of the key themes in your project. So I'm not going to do that exercise here, but I just wanted people to think about that.
Yeah, and I think what's on that page is good, but that was also specific to that event, and there's been a lot of like conversation like that. I think what's not really present in some of that, and can be and will be, like I know Erin wanted to come today, but it looks like she may not be able to be here. I'm not sure. But like Erin's conversations and Angela's conversations, I feel like some speculative thoughts on to address what Bradly said would be. I think the unique thing that we have right now, for what it's worth, is we have a fairly diverse set of eyes looking at this. Like we have, Erin and Angela have fairly different backgrounds. Even the way the team for the actual project at New York Celebration of Women in Computing was fairly diverse. We had a few undergraduates from India. We had Min. Oh, I forgot. Min's technically on the team too. Actually, I'm talking with her later today, so it'll be good to update. Min is a social worker turned data scientist. So that's a cool thing to have. And she would, honestly, we could get her to come in on some projects and do data work with us. Erin is recently graduated in I think she's a business degree and is going to be doing some data work herself. So we have a pretty diverse set of backgrounds as it is, which is was the original thrust of the New York Celebration of Computing projects. So I think that I think that still holds as like a really cool and important thing to be able to show off that, hey, you can bring, kind of like the original impetus for the project at New York Celebration of Women Computing was like, let's actually have a diverse set of people. And we can still do that. And then also some of the topics that we're looking at are I think, courageous, if you will, to look at them.
Yeah.
And figuring out, like an earnest look at technology and, and ethics. So I'll leave it at that and move on to the other stuff.
Okay, so yeah, let's move on in the Slack review here. So events and discussion, nothing new there. Events news, there's this, it's not new, okay. Not seeing a whole lot. All right, General usually has something, so actually, yeah, there was a Twitter post about party parrots in the lab, so if I'm doing party parrots on the Slack here, is we have a lot of them here now. They've caught on. I uploaded like probably about 6 to 8 months ago, I uploaded like about 20 different party parrots. I got the entire template and I put it in to the Slack. And
oh, you did?
Yeah,
I'm
I did.
Glad. I didn't know if that was you. I know like ambulance and stuff like that, but I approve entirely.
Yeah, so it's like, thanks to Slack, I communicate with students doing research with me mostly in the language of party parrots. I don't know if that's cool, but they seem to tolerate it. Well, it's it's catching on, and it's definitely I don't know, it's just nice. It's just you see a party parrot, you want to communicate it. I don't know, something, but that's good. And then I need to contact Zarina. I haven't done that. I've been busy this week, so but we're gonna maybe get in touch here. So I'm just catching up on that. I don't know. In this external combo, did you ever get in touch with Miguel Nunez or? I
haven't had like a full conversation with him, but I see that he joined Genelia, which is awesome. So congrats again to him.
Yeah.
And I may reach out to him regarding he'd be a good contact for some other stuff I'm working on right now. But I think he would be someone really cool to potentially invite to come and speak at our lab. Or Diva Worm, whatever's more appropriate, honestly. But I think it's really important for the lab to keep in mind as a contact who would be cool to be in touch with on a variety of fronts.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good. Great. Not sure we have anything new in these areas here. Open chat forum. Okay, that usually has good stuff in it. So again, we had last Saturday. Then we have this first time getting a deep dive on Jira project management stuff. I have to say, ZenHub. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if it's a version of Jira that I'm using or something, but ZenHub is like way, like not even close. Like it looks like Jira is almost like a knockoff of ZenHub, even though I know Jira is much older and more established, right?
I guess, yeah, I would imagine. But
I've heard so many, like one of my friends wrote like some books about how to use Jira for agile project management. It's like, okay, but I'm surprised at how it feels more legacy probably,
yeah,
and so on. But yeah.
Oh, okay, so this is like just two different technologies that are basically the same that you wanted to try.
Oh yeah, I'm using Jira for some of the things that I'm doing, but as the first time I've gotten full access to a Jira, like a Jira board. I'm not advocating we use it at all
Okay.
because I don't like it as much.
Yeah.
But just to see, like, just this is more like a lab manager, project manager comment, or like, you know, people who are doing software development use Jira all the time. Wow, it's just like I couldn't possibly recommend ZenHub more than Jira from what I've seen so far. Which is you know, I'm not trying to hype man ZenHub, but I was just surprised at the disparity of like the features are so much more fleshed out and integrative. Like in Jira, you can only assign a task to one person,
Okay.
which
Yeah, it's not great.
like that sounds like something that should be fixed right away. Like even the, and I don't know if that's part of the advantage of being built upon GitHub as ZenHub is, but you know, just this is all kind of, you know, not essential commentary for this meeting, but I was just very surprised at that.
Yeah. Yeah, there are conversations to be had here about the like technology adoption and why do people adopt one platform over another, and so it's you know, sometimes it's not always because it's better. You know, you'd think it would be, but yeah, legacy stuff, and you have people like sometimes there are certain features that are, you know, more developed in a certain platform, and then that's popular. So yeah, and like, you know, the whole story behind like Windows. The reason why it's so prevalent is because all the businesses bought IBM machines, and they had, you know, a place to put Windows operating systems, and so, you know, that's where you had a lot of that market already built in. You know, it just, yeah. So that's an interesting. Thank you for that update on that. So, and then this paper in Johan's group next week. Thalamocortical mechanisms regulating the relationship between transient beta events and human tactile perception. Well, that's interesting. So this is like the sense of touch, and then transient beta events are EEG signals like in a certain band that are used 15 to 29 hertz that are used to sort of predict things. And there was actually a discussion on Twitter this week about like how EEG bands, like they have different frequency bands, and they give them Greek letters. So there's like the alpha band and the beta band and the delta band and so forth. And they were saying that it's not necessarily a very good indicator of behavior. It's just oftentimes like some generalized brain state, like, you know, your alpha waves or your beta waves, it's like related to sleep or something like that. But then if you try to correlate it with behavior, it's very hard to kind of get a handle on what that means. As opposed to something like, you know, we're used to like fMRI, where you have like specific brain regions that are, you know, active and associated with some behavior, right? I mean, it's not it's not really a direct measure of activity, but it's like there's some sort of chain of events there that you can trace. Whereas with EEG components, it's not as straightforward. So I don't have that up in front of me, but I mean, that was sort of the idea. So and then one more thing we'll do before we go on is this virtual reality and neurotech channel. We had something by Jesse here. This
is a job that actually was retweeted by Judy Fan, who is someone I'm really curious about, and you know, hashtag potentially someone I'd want to do a PhD with, which I don't say about many people. But she retweeted this job offer, and more so than the job offer, I think it's for PhD graduate students mostly. The machine assisted cognition group at Toyota Research looks like something interesting to check out for some of our. It's an avenue, like I kind of knew about it, but it looks like it might be an interesting avenue to consider for some of the things regarding, you know, like an applied area for some of our cognition studies. And there's also, if you look at in the reply to that message, there's a in like the reply in the thread. It says one reply 16 hours ago.
Yeah.
There's a link to, I believe, the Toyota research, like their homepage.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention that because it might be some inspo for ways to talk about things we want to contribute to as we explore that sort of, you know, machine assisted cognition, and the interfaces between you know, mind and machine and virtual or extended reality type environments. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. This is one reply here. So this is the link here for Toyota Research Institute. Okay. So that's something, if you're interested. We're actually going to be talking a little bit more about machine-assisted cognition later, as I've already sort of given some heads up on before. But yeah, we'll get to that. So now I'd like to open the floor, and I know Anusha has something she wanted to present. Why don't we let Anusha go first and talk about her papers that she wants to review, and then we can have an update from Jesse, and then we can talk about this thing I keep promoting but not describing. So, are you still there, Anusha?
Yes, I'm here. How do I share my screen?
Okay, so if you go to your bar on the bottom, it's the third button from the left. There's a little arrow. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might, I don't know if it'll give you options for which windows of screen you can do, but there's some options usually that come up.
Right. Like, so, I don't know which, I think I'll just do entire screen.
Okay.
That's usually easiest, and we'll get everything. Okay, we see that.
Yes. So for these two papers, Jesse helped me out in finding them. Okay, so I'm first going to go over this one, the quick guide to the critical period, because it's much shorter and it's like an overview. Can you guys see the paper?
Yes.
Yeah, if you want, like, expand it, that's good, but we can see it totally fine right now.
Oh, any better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Okay, so a critical period is basically like a sensitive period in time where if you miss this period of time, you know, depending on the system or whatever is deprived, something can go amiss, basically. That's like generally how I see it. And so, like the concept of plasticity, like the brain's ability to, like to change basically and to like learn and, like, I guess in a lot of ways, like be more childlike. It's like related to critical periods. It's pretty interesting. Actually, it's my second paper. Okay, sorry. Okay, basically there are, multiple critical periods. Like we have the language acquisition one that me and I think Angela has an interest in, and like binocular vision. So Hubel and Wiesel, they did these like really important experiments in the 1960s, and they found out about this like binocular like deprivation basically. So what they did is that they had cats and they sutured one eyelid shut of the cat. And I think they exposed that cat to darkness, if I'm right. And when this eyelid was like sutured shut, like throughout the critical period, the cat had blindness in that eye, you know, regardless that the retina of the eye worked fine once you unsuture the eye. Like there's nothing changed about the anatomy of the eye. I mean to say. So they mentioned just a little point here on the auditory space map in the midbrain. I thought that was really interesting. Didn't get to look further into that, but it's something I'm interested in. Yeah, and so the critical period for ocular dominance begins when animals open their eyes, pretty much. So cats and ferrets are born with closed eyelids, and humans, we are born with open eyes, hopefully. And so like the onset of hearing marks the start of the critical period for integrating like sounds like from eye or ear into like the auditory system in the brain. Let's see here. Yeah, so like this experiment I think is quite similar. I see it as quite similar to the cat experiment, like with ferrets here.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing trying to figure out the binocular deprivation. Like, you know, you have some ferrets, you raise them in complete darkness, and they're close to normal up to 5 weeks, like for up to 5 weeks. But when their eyes open, like vision will disappear if the animal is kept in the dark. So like there's that 5 weeks is like pretty important. Let's see. Oh, this part of the paper I thought was really cool. It was like talking about inhibitory versus excitatory circuitry. So like let's see here. Yeah, so we know that GABA is like an inhibitory transmitter, and like BDNF, I forget exactly what it stands for, but I do know it's a nerve growth factor. That promotes like a lot of growth. It's really good like for your brain and learning and that kind of thing. Let's see. So if you rear the animal in the dark, you delay this maturation of the inhibitory signaling, which happens through GABA. And this will prolong the critical period, basically, which I thought was pretty interesting. Let's see. Yeah, another thing here, like, so for mice, they are deficient for an enzyme that is needed to make GABA, right? So these mice, they're insensitive to monocular deprivation, so, you know, any kind of deprivation doesn't affect their eyesight, but if you treat them with diazepam, which acts as a GABA agonist, it restores their plasticity. I thought that was really interesting, especially because, like, you know, like diazepam, it's like pretty similar to like medications like for anxiety, for example. Yeah, medications for anxiety, which can like kind of increase like more of the inhibitory signaling to kind of help the person calm down. The critical period also has structural changes. It's not just like transmission between the synapses. There are structural changes. So I think that's like the main point I take from that. And like it makes sense, like, you know, whatever receptor changes there are, they are reversible to some extent, but when the critical period comes to an end, it's harder for them to change. I mean, which is like pretty intuitive, I feel. Okay. So I'm trying to just pick out the main points here. Let's see. Yeah, I think here they were looking at, like, they're talking about, like, structure. Like, the most significant structural changes in the cortex are those seen in the extracellular matrix. And it becomes more and more rigid during development after birth. So they talked about this chondroitin sulfate proteoglycans, which make up a lot of this extracellular matrix. And so, okay, so these rats, in like this yellow highlight here, basically, they were given an enzyme that kind of digests those, whatever makes up the extracellular matrix. And it made the visual cortex susceptible again to the monocular deprivation. So this does suggest that however mature the extracellular matrix is, like, does depend on when the critical period can close. Like, because these people were able to kind of get a little bit more life out of the critical period by kind of enzymatically digesting this matrix. If that made sense. Yeah, there's a no-go 66 receptor. I thought that, I really like that name. It's like no-go.
Right.
I wonder if that has any, like, if someone named it because of that. So this contributes to the closure of the critical period. So the more no-go receptor you have, it contributes to the closure of your critical period. So the no-go 66 receptor, it receives this inhibitor called no-go, and no-go prevents myelin associated growth from happening. So what I believe that means is like nerves are like the dendrites, so they can be myelinated, and it speeds up like saltatory conduction, like speeds up signaling. Yeah. Like, from my understanding, it would inhibit that, so there wouldn't be as much signaling, but we can go over that. Let's see. Yeah, one neat thing is that they talked about here briefly like about plasticity that can occur beyond a critical period. And here they were mentioning where the yellow highlight is.
Yeah.
That, like, your experiences can affect this. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like sensory experiences.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, whatever sensory experiences you have early enable the brain to more efficiently respond to a similar experience later on, even in adulthood. And, like, this training can enhance adult plasticity, which is cool. And, of course, there are a lot of therapeutic implications if we can kind of get plasticity going. Like for patients with traumatic brain injury or like stroke or something like that. We could, like the medical field would definitely benefit from that. They could learn, how to maybe get some of the function back that like a stroke patient might lose, like speech or the motor movement maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about here. It's also done, so yeah. And okay, now we have the second paper, which is about reopening the windows for critical periods, so like how we can manipulate them. This is something I did not know about prior to this paper, so I think that's pretty cool. I think it's a pretty interesting topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they mentioned here in the blue highlight, kind of what I just mentioned, it could help treat brain injury if we can improve plasticity to help out with recovery. And strokes are, of course, very debilitating to some people. Let's see. Okay, so a window of heightened plasticity during brain development is called the critical or sensitive period. And it's time when you need input, a particular type of input for the proper development of a particular brain circuit. So if you don't get the circuit stimulation, the brain function served by that circuit will be permanently compromised. Like I see this pretty much like the monocular deprivation where you suture the eye. Like if you suture the eye, that eye is not getting like visual input, right? There are also sensitive periods which are less stringent than critical periods, but during these times, what you experience in your environment can have a lot of impact on your brain circuitry. See. Yeah, yes. So some sensitive periods in children include those for seeing, hearing, receptive language, speech production, and higher cognitive functions. I remember one of my courses in my master's, I took a language course, and it was really interesting because the child, she needed a hearing aid, and it was difficult for her to kind of check her own speech production. Like it's easier for us, it's not too hard for someone to teach someone how to say something, that you can kind of get feedback from your voice, like from another person, but that's something like she had an issue with. She had some kind of genetic condition which caused that.
Could you scroll up for a second to see the diagram? Okay.
Yeah, I think here the main point is that they overlap, like or staggered, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the peak for each sensory period is staggered throughout development. So peak of the sensory period, then we have this peak of moving language, and the peak of like higher cognition, and they're all staggered, which is like interesting. We mentioned ocular dominance here. And it definitely makes sense that whenever we see like from the animal's ocular dominance, it's reflected in the cells of the visual cortex, like in the brain, which makes sense to me. People and Rousseau. So early human life, the majority of neuron communication is explanatory. And as the brain matures, inhibitory neurotransmission grows. So that makes me think of just generally when they say, I think 21 is the age where the prefrontal cortex is developed, where we can kind of inhibit some impulses young people may have. So one way that the inhibitory, so they show that an inhibitory threshold exists because they disrupted the gene in mice, so to prevent the mice from having GABA in their system, which is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter. And so the mice produce less GABA than normal. And yeah, I think this was also in the other paper, but so in this case, where GABA is at a low level, shutting one eye early in development doesn't affect ocular dominance. The critical period plasticity failed to begin. And when they administer benzodiazepine, like Valium, I thought this was really cool because it's just so relevant to humans. This enhanced the effect of GABA, and the critical period plasticity returned. So, and monocular deprivation affected ocular dominance as expected. And I think it's very cool how these critical periods can be manipulated by a pharmacological, basically like a drug. I think that's really interesting. Especially a drug that's so common for people to take. Okay, so there are some theories here. Researchers have some theories that the excitatory and inhibitory imbalance underlies the pathology of disorders like epilepsy, autism, and schizophrenia. So, so I mentioned here that some of the genes that are associated with autism spectrum disorder is important for establishing or maintaining EI balance, which would suggest that it could have some role or, function in autism. Yes, and so in mice, if you disrupt the excitatory inhibitory balance in the mature prefrontal cortex, if you disrupt this, then the mice have social and cognitive deficits reminiscent of those occurring in psychiatric disorders. I thought that was really interesting. I do want to check out the paper that's cited here because I want to check out how they measured the mice's behavior. I have read papers about where they do animal models of depression, basically, and there's a sink or swim test, and they'll basically put the dogs in some water, and the idea is that if the animal's more depressed, they won't try to swim as much. I thought that was kind of, I think it's really creative to model depression in that way, for example. We need something to measure in an experiment to get at what our question is. One important point I thought here was that if you extend the creation of one critical period instead of onset of others, I feel like this could be related to that staggered diagram we were looking at. Yeah, and there are also non-invasive means to help out with plasticity, like enriching, like an enriched environment, like educational video games. They have like a lot of, I've heard of a lot of products like where they say like they'll, help make you smarter or whatever that kind of thing. Prozac is a very interesting antidepressant. So, it triggers youth-like plasticity in adult rats, and they think that this works through EI regulation. And fluoxetine, I'm not sure how related it is to Prozac, but it also reactivates ocular dominance plasticity in adult rats. So this could help out with people who have amblyopia, which I think it's like the layman's term is like lazy eye, if I'm right. Yeah. And so there are clinical trials to test fluoxetine as a treatment for amblyopia in humans, which is neat. But an antidepressant could have these other uses, especially in the brain. Fluoxetine has potential for promoting motor recovery as well, victims who have suffered through. And like I mentioned just like a couple of seconds ago, there are other non-invasive ways to create plasticity, and so one is environmental enrichment. And that can also yield plasticity. I'm not sure what exactly environmental enrichment would be for a rat, but based on some things I have read, I think it would be different types of toys in their environment, or where they have to make mazes and that kind of thing. Different activities for them to do, basically.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting segue into affordances too. If you put them in an environmental affordances, which in the case of a rat, might be tunnels and things to climb on and interact with. I think that's interesting to think about. And I think that's actually one of the most interesting things we can. I think there's a lot of overlap between that one in particular and things that we're trying to look at. So that's interesting to think about.
Yeah. So also another thing is caloric restriction in adult rats reopens the critical period for ocular dominance. I thought that was really cool that restricting calories could do that. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in learning more about that.
I think that's associated with the neuro, what's it called? When you're fasting, there's increased chance of I forget, there's a specific thing your brain cells kind of recycle. I think it's associated with that.
I did do this paper in anorexia, and the interesting thing I found was that, through papers, obviously, other people found this. When the anorexic person restricts calories, that's one thing. But when they combine that with exercise, it's where it becomes almost addictive. I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, it's the combination with exercise that makes the condition so difficult to recover from. Or at least one factor.
Yeah.
One interesting thing maybe at this juncture that might help you would be that there's a hypothesis in the scientific community that depression itself might be sort of an adaptive way to get through a horrific experience, that the brain might be going into some sort of hibernation, and maybe that kind of ties in with all of this. I thought that was interesting for all the stuff that you're presenting so well. Okay, I'll go. Bye.
I'm sorry, is that Erin? Or Megan?
Yes, I would Erin.
Okay, yes, thank you, Erin. It sounds really cool, and I would definitely look into that hibernation theory about depression. That seems really interesting. Okay, and we talk here about barn owls, and so, like, we know that barn owls, like, they don't need, like, as much light as we do to see where something is. Like, they have, like, their own systems, kind of like bats, where they can figure out, like, where the sound is coming from, and, like, they can map that with their visual information, which is pretty interesting. And so, it says here, like, if you train the owls and you give them, like, more changes in this experience, they can improve the capacity for learning in adult owls, which does make sense, like, if you're providing more enriched experiences, different varieties of experiences. Yes, let's see here. Yeah, so BDNF, nice mentions here. And if you elevate BDNF before it is supposed to be elevated, I'm not sure what a PD cell is, but the inhibitory activity in the cortex, in the visual cortex, develops faster. Which is interesting. Like, it's like also, I feel like this is saying, like, we want plasticity, but we don't want to, like, we don't want to make it happen too early either before it's supposed to happen. Yeah. Yeah, I think this, like, is a extracellular matrix, which is something I discussed earlier, and the enzyme that degrades it. Oh, yeah, this was pretty neat. So, like, the amygdala is associated with emotion, right? Like, especially fear. And so, like, during infancy, yeah, it's actually really interesting because the amygdala has, like, kind of these connections with the hippocampus, which is associated with memories. So, like, during infancy, it can be, like, flexible, which seems like a really adaptive thing, right? Like, if, a baby, they experience something that scares them, they can kind of, for lack of a better term, like, get over it, because they have that plasticity. But if you acquire fear after a critical period, it's very, very hard to extinguish that fear. And that definitely has ramifications for PTSD. Yeah, so in mature mice, if you give that enzyme that breaks down the extracellular matrix, it makes the fear memory more, like, pliable, so they can actually lose fear memories that they gained in adulthood, if that makes sense. So, like, altering the structure of the brain enables the mice to have, like, that plasticity, that more flexibility, and get rid of some of their fear associations that they have. Okay, so myelin and its associated proteins can strongly inhibit axon growth. And so increased myelination is a major reason why neural circuits fail to regenerate with age. And here we talk about the no-go receptor again. The no-go receptor has a role in this myelin signaling, and if you take away this myelin signaling system, you can have ocular dominant plasticity extended, which makes sense, because myelin inhibits plasticity for, yeah. We're talking about MACE 1.
I'm not sure how, if you were going to continue to go through the whole paper, but I may suggest sticking to some of the highlights in the different sections, just because we might have to do some other things today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually, if we could just summarize this paper, and then we could talk about it a little bit, and then.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just look for like the very important things. Yeah, and at this point they're pretty much talking about like the real life implications of this research, like and the effects it could have, the beneficial effects it could have on human beings, like children who have experienced adversity or very traumatic experiences. To help them get through these experiences. And obviously stroke victims is one. Yeah, and that's it. Yep, it's all done.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was very good. Very thorough, and I think there are a lot of issues that we can... I was taking notes here, so I mean, I've read about this, but it's like revisiting this. It's a lot of it is coming back. So we've got...
Yeah.
I think Angela was here and she left, and Erin's here now. So, do we have any questions about that? Anything that looks like really fun?
I don't think. Erin, are you on the phone and you can't see the screen at all? Is that what the case is for Erin?
Yeah.
Okay. We can put the papers in the chat or in the Slack, but basically, Anusha was just going over 2 papers about critical periods. So that I know you can't see that, but we just went over them, and that's kind of what it was about.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think. Let's see. I think a lot of that second paper where they're turning on and turning off the critical period. I think it's really interesting how they're able to do that. Different things that they're able to manipulate in the brain, but also that there are different sensory critical periods. So you have like a visual critical period, a language critical period, etc.
Yeah, I think after this is thinking like it would be cool to start creating a kind of database of critical periods, like just to kind of understand what they are, and this could lead into maybe we start making sure people document the different kinds of critical periods and different things that affect them, like either pharmacologically or exposure to things, and also like even just the thing about an enriched environment that obviously jumped out to me in terms of affordances and how affordances affect these. I'm very fascinated with that concept of how affordances affect cognitive capacities, because if you can't do something, like having your eye completely closed, that's essentially an affordance being limited, like you're being, hey, you can't look out of those eyes, so you have to, adjust your honestly, like even, this is a whole other like big tangent, but like evolutionary speaking, binocular vision was a major development. And we talked about that with the Paul Kysek talk a little bit and his roadmap for evolution. So kind of like putting this arbitrary constraint on a specific evolutionary development, that's quite an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, I think these were good overview papers, and I think there'll be good fodder for creating a little bit more structure in what are these periods and how do they affect development of a lot of things, but cognitive abilities and ways that agents or organisms can interact with the environment. Is there anything like that particularly stood out to you, Anusha, as something that you would like to follow up more on in what you've read so far, or things like where do you think you want to go next after these things, if that makes sense?
Yes. So, like you mentioned, the database of critical periods. I would be very happy to start working on that. Yeah, and maybe like Jesse, like I could have a meeting with you or something, and we could like discuss what we would want in that, what information we would want in that database.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was like pharmacological manipulation, because I had not learned about that before. I just thought that was so cool. Like, and there are different ways, like with drugs, that they can inhibit different things. Like you can have like a drug that eats up the extracellular matrix, like alters the structure, or that kind of thing. They work in like different ways, so that's something that I thought was cool.
As a semi-tangent to that, a figure who we've talked about in the lab before comes to mind is potentially someone we could reach out about that topic specifically, and I'm sure we could get some really interesting conversation. I don't know if they would ever come here and talk about it, but it's some that topic specifically makes me think of our friend, our colleague in associative efforts, and also at the EI workshop. I know Adam Safron's doing stuff at Johns Hopkins University for psychedelics at the moment, so he might be an interesting perspective to ask about that if you're interested in those things. Anyway, hello Angela, I saw you pop in there again.
Hello there.
Okay. I think, is there anything else we wanted to say about this? I think that was really good.
Yeah.
One point might be behaviorism, and I know we definitely have to be careful given some of the current and historical like human rights abuses in behaviorism. We have to think about like system design, study design, intervention design, but behaviorism has sort of tapped into the inherent or internal sort of pharmacological, if you will, theme in order to modify behavior. One would hope typically in a positive way. And, we know a lot of things like exercise can boost your endorphin, things like that. We've got a lot of interventions that people do throughout their day, like we use caffeine or whatever, but there's also things that don't have to do with substances like caffeine, things like exercise or small rewards throughout your day, like, I'll do this and then I'll watch my TV show. Very tiny things like that can be affecting things. And I wonder, one thing that concerns me is that when we find out these cool things like, there's a critical period, what a great opportunity, I think sometimes then we also sort of chain ourselves up as a species, like, that's the only way it can be done. And I liked what everyone was talking about pharmacological interventions, but I think there's also other interventions, and maybe there's a different way, like with that that study on rats and neuronal development, and we were talking earlier about, I think that woman won a Nobel Prize, the PhD student who was investigating it, and she kept throwing out her research saying, everyone says that neurons can't be, there's no neurogenesis in adult brains. So I think if we can kind of also, while establishing, yes, these are the standard generalizable stages of development or a very critical period of time, and it is sort of a scaffolding structure like they talk about in educational psychology, where if the kid learns that at this point, then it makes every other thing that is sort of reliant on that easier. But there are also ways potentially to get around that, like they studied where there's a hypothesis that adult caregivers, like young moms, young dads of babies who are learning how to speak, because of the environment they're in, they're constantly with another human being they're responsible for who can't speak. That kind of environment is way different than going to a class where everyone speaks English and you're all trying to learn a different language, but everybody really knows what you mean. When somebody doesn't know what you mean, it's like a completely different, you're in immersion basically. And I think, and they were also suggesting that that is the point in adults where language ability, which we thought was not possible to learn a language fluently, is sort of like another critical period that we have. And a lot of it's down to situational things. Anyway, so.
That's great. Thank you for that observation. Yeah, so let's follow up on this in the coming weeks. Definitely thank you, Anusha, for presenting on this and giving us a little bit of a sort of discussion, some momentum on that.
Congrats on your first presentation here, and hopefully there will be many more.
Yeah. And if people want to present on something, it can be very informal. You can just even discuss something. Visual aids help, but you don't need them necessarily. So I encourage people, if you want to present something, bring it to the meeting, and we'll discuss it. So now I want to move on. I think Jesse had an announcement.
Yeah. I don't know how you want to structure the rest of the meeting. We have like half an hour. I know Angela and Erin haven't had any really time to give any updates, so I don't know if you want to give them the space to do that. My updates are very quick and mostly, self-congratulatory in nature. So, and I don't know, do you want to do anything else besides that? Or do you want to do a paper? What do you have to present, Bradly?
I was going to present a short presentation and then maybe a couple papers, or maybe a couple things. So it'd probably be about 25 minutes, 30 minutes to do that. So we're kind of...
Okay. Well, if Erin or Angela want to do, we can have a lightning round of updates if you want to say anything quickly.
Hi, I'm Angela here. I was talking about doing something on data trust for that conference that Bradly went. Yeah. I just got my vaccine yesterday, so yay! I am dying. I'm wiped out. This is my conference, so yeah. So nice. I am behind on a few projects now because of that and the others. So that's the only update.
Okay.
No, that's okay. And just as a follow-up, I've yet to do a major ethics team update. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the meeting, but things are finally settling down for me. So this week I'm going to have a little bit more. There is a little more structure for some ethics team projects, and I don't know if Brad's going to talk about the other events soon more, but yes, there's much to do, and I'm still catching up, but it will come. So glad you're here.
Yeah. Okay. Erin, did you have something to update us on?
Just on the great old job hunt, things are going well. Not much to update on, but I'm looking forward to getting more involved, and we'll look forward to the opportunities when they come.
Yeah, and Erin and I had conversations this week about a variety of things, but I know I'm kind of the limiting factor right here, so I have to kind of get my life in order.
Oh, not at all. Just so you know, if you had brought some things up, I might have been a little bit too busy to work on them. So this was actually, we coincided.
You're good. Don't worry about that. But more I'm just acknowledging that. I think everybody here pretty much knows. I'll stick with this into my update, which is I have 3 to 4 new things to talk about. Number one, which has been a life goal for a very, very, very long time, is that I may not leave Albany immediately, but I can. I can basically leave whenever I want to now. In part because I haven't accepted it yet, and I haven't seen the details, but I have a new job that's going to be really cool and remote and actually interestingly relevant to some of the things we're talking about in terms of the AR VR stuff. Its title, it would be at a data collection type organization that specializes on healthcare related data, and particularly actually for people who have like different kinds of disabilities, learning disabilities, and other things like that. So it's a very interesting company. They're remote based, which is frankly what I wanted big time. So I could go to the UK, I could go to California, or just to Boston, wherever I wanted to go. That's been a goal for like honestly about 3 years. And I wanted to do that last year, but it just wasn't happening. So that's cool. And there's interesting focus on like biometric data as well, and how biometric data is collected in an automated sense. And I feel like that's not the same thing as VR, XR stuff, but it's quite similar. Like there's a lot of overlaps for how data is being input and output. So I'm going to be having a focus on like ways streams of automated data collection are happening, and there'll be I'll have ethical concerns about that. I'll have security concerns about that. I'll have how does this functionally happen? How do we digitize and quantify certain things? So that's kind of going to be a really cool thing, and it's a research-oriented position for me. So, there's a chance that next week, you never kind of check things before they hatch, so to say. So, I'm only saying this because I'm an offer is in the works. And if it doesn't work, I'll be devastated, But I think I'm to the place where it's like I'm okay with talking about it. So that's sort of like I'm potentially moving. I haven't set in a place yet. I've got a new job. The UK stuff that we think we've all talked about now with Anson, and potentially we could all see Angela, who's in Germany still, I believe.
Still here.
Anson will be going mid-June, and I plan to be going mid-June as well to the UK for a research grant opportunity, related to effective altruism-related stuff. And so that's cool. And then my last update will be that I am joining a startup. And actually, Anusha, I think you're still sharing your screen. If you could hit the stop sharing button, yeah.
I did not. I apologize. I don't know how to stop.
Yeah, see how if you go back to the.
But yeah, but if I share your screen, I'm getting choose what to share. So am I really sharing my screen?
I don't see
it
anything.
appears so. Oh, then my computer is freezing?
I don't know.
Oh no. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, I will now share my screen
Alright.
again. Oh, is it showing
Yeah, I can see
my
it.
screen being shared?
Yeah, I can see it.
Weird. Okay. I'm on a different setup, so you
Okay.
can probably tell. So you guys have probably heard about state-of-the-art AI. I talked about it before. It's a very interesting group. They're trying to expand. It's a startup, and it was originally kind of came into the world at NeurIPS 2020. They got a lot of. There's sort of a different take on papers with code, in that they're trying to connect models that data sets and a bunch of papers and researchers and models and concepts and repos and libraries, and this is one of their new features that they're doing. Seems to be loading a bit slow for me. I'm on a not the greatest connection here. But there's a lot of things going on here, and in so many words, I'm joining the team, and I'm going to. I would ask that people withhold talking about it outside of the meeting for the time being. It's public. It's not private information. It's just I'm going to be. I've reached out to some people, kind of mentioning, hey, I'm going to be doing a lot with them, and I'm trying to coordinate some of my social media news because I'm going to basically join them as essentially a director of strategic initiatives, which means a lot of outreach, a lot of trying to get opportunities to demo some of the product or the platform to different groups, and there's a lot of people that they already are connected to through their NeuroIPS success, and there's some new things that are upcoming, and they now have a LinkedIn page and a Facebook page with some other basic social media stuff that I've just started to help out. But I'm officially joining them in a few days in June as it starts. That's going to be a major side project for me, and it fits a lot in with we talked a little bit about the cognition futures and kind of where this comes from. Like just for those who don't really know, like cognition futures is something that I kind of this is all last year, by the way. Like this is the idea kind of started was unveiled at CSV. Which is this sort of how we come up with a frontier map and this stuff here. Will this lead me to? I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, this is a slide from the presentation. It started a long time ago, and I kind of created this. Again, we talked earlier in the meeting how this website needs a significant update because we're going to be presenting at Cogside 2021 on trajectories and cognition. Which is quite relevant to both this Cognition Futures project and also state-of-the-art AI. Like there's one of the things that we're looking to do is let's get that right now. Like you can see a bunch of things on neurosymbolic reasoning, and like this is a very machine learning heavy take on things, but there's ways to flesh that out. So you can kind of see these concept maps that they're building out, and you can kind of so on and so forth with that. But it's been work some time. We've had more and more things, and I presented recently at Princeton Envision, which unintentionally also referenced them as a place that would be really cool. It's kind of a version of what we were trying to do with this project, and now I'm with the team here, and they are, it'll be fun to work with them, and I may be able to integrate some of using the platform in our own meetings or for our own research purposes as well, and try to find some ways to enhance what they're doing, like general outreach, but also enhance some user. How it can more aid research as well. So anybody has feedback about it, or like has their own experiences with it and wants to talk about them, that can be something we talk about too. But that's my fun preview update for the time being is about that. And in so many words, it's an exciting time with a lot of changes that have been a lot of things have been brewing for many months. All like May 12th was a major date where I had all three of these things actually contacted me on the same day at a different level, like an interview and a follow-up interview or a confirmation about this or that. So it's like May 12th and May 17th were major days, and now June 1st is like I'm going to be out of this. This will be the last meeting ever in this department with these How iconic is that strange contraption covering a skylight, or this, these things that have been in my sort of room office area. So farewell from this location, but new things are ahead, and that's my update for now.
Thank you. So that's good. Now I want to move on here. I have a couple things to talk about, and then it might be a little bit over the top of the hour, but that's, it's the way these tend to go. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is there's this cognitive offloading conference, and I've been working on abstract for this. So again, if people want to contribute to this, let me know, and we can submit this. I'm going to submit this weekend because it's due, I think, Tuesday. So I want to submit it this weekend. So just drop me a line in Slack if you want to contribute. Let me see if I can put this in the chat here so people can take a look at it on their own. And this is about cognitive offloading, which is the idea that you offload information in the environment to compensate for, capacity sort of limitations of your brain or of an organism's brain. So this kind of goes through a developmental model of this, and hopefully this is something that people find interesting. I'm gonna, I think it's right at the word limit. So it's like, I can't remember how many characters. I think it's like 2,000 characters, and we're right at the limit. So it's in place. If you think something should be changed, leave a note. I can try to get it in, but we don't want to go any further down than this 3-paragraph structure because it's kind of right at the limit. So that's that. Then if I go to submissions, the submissions document, I just wanted to make a couple notes here. We have a couple. So the submission here for cognitive offloading, that's due June 1st. That's what I just showed you, so we'll be submitting that. The Cogside 2021, we got the interest group in, so that's good. That's been accepted and it's on the list. So now we have to prepare for this. We have to kind of come up with a plan and I think organize some technical details. These EI workshop submissions have been submitted. I think I mentioned that last week. This BICA conference, the International Study for the Society for the Study of Information, that's due June 15th. So that's just something that needs an abstract and that can go out. This is the Gibsonian information paper, so that's pretty much done. That just needs to be updated a bit and sent. And so that's basically our updates. I don't know if we'll probably have other things. I just want to make sure that I've kept everyone up to date on that. So if you have any questions, let me know on the Slack channel, one of the Slack channels, and we'll update the list accordingly. But we're kind of, right now we actually have a couple of the only presentation we're working on in this group is this ABM presentation, and this is due. This is going to happen on the 8th. So June 8th at 2:30, we're going to have this. So this is not this coming week, but the following week, 2:30 Eastern time in the U.S. or North America. We're going to have this workshop, and we're going to present on agent-based modeling. And I have the slides. I've been working on a rough draft of these, and I'm going to put them in I don't have them up today, but I'm going to put them in the Slack, and then maybe we can review them next week. It's just a lot of stuff that we've already gone over from different talks that are kind of put together. But this is like the metabrain models idea, where we're stacking models of different representational complexities. So we did a talk last summer on the Bradenburg vehicles, and we did a couple other talks where the slides are very relevant. So I'll get that out. That'll be coming up soon. So that's all for the updates on the submissions. Now I'd like to go into the papers, and I was planning on doing I have this lecture that I dug up from 2018 that I did on. I actually presented this before, but I'm going to go through it a little bit. So this is something that's been coming up in the Slack, and this is something human-assisted AI. So I don't want to go through the whole presentation, but I'm just going to kind of hit some highlights, and I might actually make a cut of this, put it on the YouTube channel, so for a more detailed overview of this. But this is something I've been interested in for many years, and this is something I think people in the lab are kind of interested in. The idea is that there's this idea of artificial intelligence, or AI. And so one way to look at it, of course, is AI and saying you can simulate intelligence. Another way to do it is to flip the acronym and use the acronym IA. and IA stands for intelligence augmentation. So in this case, you're actually augmenting the human intelligence with some sort of technical system. So, this is AI Winters HCI Summers graph that they found on Twitter at some point. So the idea here is that we all know what the AI Winters and AI Summers are, where AI research has fluctuated based on different developments and disillusionments. In this case, this person correlated or sort of found the connection between what happens when you have an AI winter. It turns out that you have these summers of HCI. So when AI is down, HCI or human-computer interaction tends to be up. So you have like things where when your major HCI labs form in a period where there's a AI winter. I don't know if they're connected, but it seems like maybe the funding priorities shift in that way. So that's one thing. Then there's this idea that, we have AI, but we also have IA. And IA, two big names in that area are William Ross Ashby, of course, who had this design for an intelligence amplifier in the 50s. That's not the intelligence amplifier in his head. That's just some cute thing that he made. And then Douglas Engelbart, who's the father of HCI, who did a lot of early work in interfaces and proposing how interfaces should look. So these are your sort of founding people, but there are other people. I don't want to get too much into the historiography of it. The idea is that instead of using data plus algorithms to simulate human intelligence, you're using data plus algorithms to work with or complement human intelligence. So this is an image of a sort of an automaton from the 1570s. So this was around the time of Da Vinci, where they built these automatons, which are simulated humans, and this is what the goal was. They're mechanical devices that simulated human behavior. On this side, this is in 1958. This is the design for the intelligence amplifier. So you had this user X, which is the person, this G, which is, Ashby thought of it as intelligence, but of course there are a lot of problems with single parameter intelligence, and just thinking that you can isolate intelligence and augment it is a bit much, I think. But the point is you can augment, say, like human performance, and you're using some sort of metric to do this. So this G component is the feed forward from the user to this amplifier, and the amplifier is some sort of device that improves performance. So it provides feedback to the user. You give them, say, like an action, and it gives you feedback in the form of maybe some response, positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, and then U is this improvement. So U is like the feedback and how the user is utilizing the feedback. So this was all before like closed loop brain machine interfaces or any of that. This was just kind of like a theoretical thing. And so, but we can actually look at this IA, we can think of it as strong IA or weak IA. And so weak IA is where you have complementation or cooperation between minds and machines. One example of that is what they call Centaur or cyborg chess. So this is a nice article on how to be a Centaur. It talks about Centaur chess. Basically, this Herbert Simon in 1957 said in 10 years, a computer will be able to beat a grandmaster chess player. It was a prediction. Then Garry Kasparov in 1996, which was a bit more than 10 years ago, or 10 years later, he got beaten by Deep Blue. So he lost his temper, or he walked away from the match. And he said, time to work with machines to beat them at their own game. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but that's the idea, because by about 2005, he and other people had developed this type of chess called Centaur Chess, which is where human chess players, expert chess players, will use artificial intelligence to figure out the best moves to play. You know that, like in chess, you have to evaluate moves and everything. And you can use AI to sort of sort through that space of complexity. Did someone have a question?
I just said cool. That was neat.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So then there are these human-machine trade-offs. So thinking about how to leverage these two types of intelligence. This is from a Medium blog post. You can divide this into what's easy or difficult for the human and what's easy or difficult for the machine, or what you can delegate to the machine. And so eating and drinking would be easy for a human but not good for a machine. Painting would be difficult for both. Medical diagnosis is somewhere in the middle. Object character recognition is easy for humans but probably easy for machines to do. And the machine translation, it's difficult for humans but easy for machines. So like you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're doing machine translation, they're maybe doing recognition, they're doing stuff in this area, maybe medical diagnosis, but maybe questionably so. And walking is quite a lot harder because, we think about the Boston Dynamics robots. They can do a lot of walking, but it's still kind of a tough problem. And then these other things are very hard for AI and machine learning systems to do. So we can put the human in the loop. And then, dynamic walking, which is this simulated locomotion, is here. You have, this is creative writing or style this is style transfer, something we do in artificial intelligence now. It's a bit, you get some interesting results, but not necessarily creative writing or, we couldn't really replace a human with that. And then your supercomputer, which is computationally hard, it can solve problems, but then it can't necessarily replicate intelligence. So you have to make these trade-offs. I'm going to skip these slides. I'm going to go to this. You have moderate IA, which combines strong and weak. So this is where we're sort of creating the Mona Lisa from a bunch of polygons. We can use machine generativity and human selection. So the machine generates a bunch of possible configurations of these polygons. And in this case, the human is selecting the thing that looks the most like Mona Lisa. The machine isn't doing the evaluation. The human is doing that. They're saying, this looks like what I want. And then the machine will use that as a template to run another search and then another search until you get to this Mona Lisa replication here. So the machine is generating options and the human is selecting those. This is the endless forms interface, so if that's something you're interested in. They use a genetic algorithm to generate all these polygons in different shapes and in different configurations. So then there's strong IA, and that's where you have explicit closed-loop control systems. And this is an example of a brain-computer interface, which is a good example of that. And here you have this visual stimulation. You focus your attention on an object. You maybe select the object, and you get feedback as to whether that's the right behavior, and you can use that process back and forth to sort of align your behavior. And so I wrote a preprint on this, Integrative Introduction to Human Augmentation Science, where I go through a lot of this stuff. The augmentation of attention, this is the Yerkes-Dodson model, which is the sort of the bell curve of arousal. So the idea is that if you have low amounts of arousal, you tend to be disengaged. If you have high amounts of arousal, you tend to be distracted. But a moderate amount of arousal is the optimal output. And so the question is, how do we use an interface to balance your arousal in this moderate zone, in this white zone? And so this is something we can use a closed-loop feedback system for quite effectively. And this relates to the capacity of a model of attention. So this is something that we can use to augment attention as well as arousal. And then this is the curve. And so we want to be in this region. So we have to sort of mitigate any shift in either direction on this curve. We want to stop it with like some sort of intelligent system, and then recommend to the person, maybe, give them a stimulus that brings them back to this sort of high level of arousal, or, alerts them. Like kind of like if you're going to drive off the road, if you're falling asleep, like an alert to wake you up to make sure you don't do that. So this is the maximum value is up at the top. That's sort of your optimum value. This is the variance, which is a bandpass filter, which you can use to determine the optimal range and where you want to place your mitigation. And then finally, there's this video games as human AI systems. So if we think about video games like Pac-Man, the ghosts behave stochastically. Pac-Man, player one uses a strategy contingent on nature. So this is like this sort of game against nature where you're trying to predict a stochastic process. And then you can actually model this as a game in terms of game theory, where you can model the behavior of the stochastic system. And so this is a way to like kind of interact with the artificial intelligence, even if it's just kind of behaving stochastically. And so you try to find the optimal payoff. You can also mitigate things in a more complex systems manner. So this is a fitness landscape, or sometimes you can think of this as a gradient descent map, where you have these maxima and minima, where you want to get to like some point on this landscape, maybe the maximum, or if you're trying to minimize your energy, the minima, but you want to be able to find those points in that space. And this is a multi-dimensional space. This is where you have multiple dimensions of, say, intelligence or behavior or whatever. And so again, we can use, they use this game Space Fortress in a lot of experiments, psychology experiments. And I can't, this is where they're looking at plateaus, dips, and leaps. So this is like skilled performance. And the idea is you train on this game. And this game is designed to like help you sort of gain expertise as you train. So it enables plasticity in a lot of the expertise behaviors. And so this is but notice this figure here, these hours, after so many hours of practice, you gain a certain number of points. It tends towards the top, but it's not uniform. There are a lot of dips and plateaus and leaps. So this is not a linear process of augmentation. So these are things that, you can do. Familiar games with different objectives. There's this game Anti-Pac-Man. If you put someone in Anti-Pac-Man, they'd have to adopt a different strategy than Pac-Man. This is where the ghosts chase Pac-Man instead of the other way around, or something like that. And then direct cursor control, where you're using your mind to control a cursor. So that's all I have there. Like I said, I'll make a longer version of this later. So let me go back to the papers. I want to go through a couple things before we go here. The first is to mention that the Emergent Interaction conference, the workshop, they now have a Twitter feed. So I know that Jesse pointed this out on Twitter yesterday. He sort of liked it and retweeted it. So this is their Twitter feed, and they're going to be sort of following up from the workshop. So this is the workshop website. This is Emergent HCI is the Twitter handle. So if you want to follow them, you'll find out more about like some of the things you're thinking about. Let's see. There's also this biogenetic models of cognition thing. This was a tweet from Harry Shevlin. He talks about kinds of intelligence, has been reading about biogenetic approaches to cognition in biological versus artificial systems. I guess kinds of intelligence is a group or something. Inspired by the famous sandwich alignment chart. We quickly threw together a cognitive agent alignment chart. So this is the chart here. This is where you have complexity versus implementation. So they're kind of talking about like different things about, what's a cognitive agent. So it could be a human, a honeybee, a bacterium, any artificial neural network, brain simulation, a Chinese room, and a thermostat. And so, you think about all these statements and you're like, where does this fall in the space here? Is this an implementation rebel, which I guess is like someone who isn't implementing it in a way that's canonical, versus a complexity rebel who's maybe like, I don't know what that means exactly, but I think they talk more about it in this list here. So this is a draft but I wanted to point this out so we can think about some of these things. Like when you say cognitive agent, what is the analogy? Well, what are you thinking is a cognitive agent? There are different systems that can be a cognitive agent, but they all have sort of different criteria, and people are approaching it using different sort of assumptions and these sorts of things. So this is maybe something that we might follow up on. Then I guess I want to finish up here by, well, 2 papers. This first one is how to work at a research institute when you're not an academic. So this is from the Data and Society team. And this is a open source group. They just kind of make it's a research institute where they do a lot of programming and original research. And they kind of discuss, you're working on research, but you're not like in a traditional sort of pipeline or pathway. How do you deal with that? So these are just some interviews of people. And I thought many of you are in that situation, so you might find that informative. And then finally, let's see. There's this paper here. This is a review from Hopi Hoekstra is an author. She's a longstanding neuroscience person at Harvard. So this is in zoology as well. This paper is called Expanding Evolutionary Neuroscience, Insights from Comparing Variation in Behavior. So this is sort of an evolutionary approach to neuroscience, but not in the sense of evolutionary psychology where they talk about brains being evolved from the savannah or whatever, but this is more like looking at variation. So the summary is neuroscientists have long studied species with convenient biological features to discover how behavior emerges from conserved molecular, neural, and circuit level processes. Basically, they're referring to model organisms like C. elegans. And I mentioned before that C. elegans has this sort of, these perfect properties that make it ideal for sort of studying all sorts of different model systems. It's a model organism, but a lot of model systems like aging and, some other movement behaviors. So, it's just an ideal organism. But of course, it's convenient, but it's not necessarily going to give you a lot of information about variation and other types of mechanisms that might exist across the tree of life, say. But with the advent of new tools from viral vectors and gene editing to automated behavioral analysis, there has been a recent wave of interest in developing new non-traditional model species. So these are model species, or these are organisms that maybe we couldn't study before because we didn't have the tools. We didn't know enough about them. We couldn't keep them in captivity long enough, etc. And so these non-traditional model species, because we have these things, we can just sequence a genome pretty quickly, or we can, insert a gene into the genome and see what the effect is of it, or we can look at the behavioral analysis from just a video. Those are all things that contribute to us being able to do this. So here we advocate for a complementary approach to model species development. That is model clade development. And a clade is on an evolutionary tree, it's like a cluster of branches that are all sort of have a common ancestor. And clades can be anything you want. It's just some common ancestry-based grouping. So, humans are a clade technically, they're different species of Homo. There's primates as a clade. You have mammals as a clade, vertebrates as a clade, and so forth. So model clade development as a way to integrate an evolutionary comparative approach with neurobiological and behavioral experiments. Capitalizing on natural behavioral variation and investing in experimental tools for model clades will be a valuable strategy for the next generation of neuroscience diversity. So this, I think in particular, Anusha might be interested in this paper where we have it's a nice review. It kind of goes over somehow we think about we have laboratory strains of mice, for example, where we have a control versus a manipulation, where we might insert a gene, or it might have a mutation, defined mutation in it. In this case, we have a common ancestor with natural variation, and then we can take one of those variants and do the control and manipulation on each one of them. And it gives you an idea of the diversity in a bunch of variants with a common ancestor. So this is basically what they're advocating for. And then you can do things like look at evolutionary, experimental evolution, or back crossing, where you have different generations, where you might have a gene that, a mutant or a mutation or a gene that's been inserted, and then breed them across different generations, and then, get like different genotypes, and then look at the different genotypes that are generated by backcrossing. You can have other types of things going on. You can look at subspecies, recently diverged species, distantly diverged species. So you have these different time scales of where evolution is happening, or where you're getting inheritance happening, and it's turning into different species and different groups, and all these different things. So it's just a matter of time scale, but you can put it in a common framework. And then they talk about traditional model species versus non-traditional model species. So you can look at like paternal versus no paternal care in mouse, but that doesn't tell you a lot about like what happens in different species. Or you're trying to make a comparison between mouse and human, but that comparison may not be necessarily appropriate. If we look at other species and we look across that diversity, we can get a sense of what paternal care versus no paternal care looks like, and then maybe we can make different types of comparisons to humans or mouse. And so it's just a matter. So a model clade would be all these different species of this genus, and you can look at like the diversity. Maybe there is no paternal care in some species, paternal care in other species. Why did that transition happen? And you can think about it in terms of evolution. There was like an event here maybe, and an event here that are independent that led to paternal care. There's if you think about diurnality versus nocturnality, which is whether they sleep during the day or during the nighttime, that also follows a sort of what they call polyphyletic pattern, where you have a number of independent events in a clade, which where you have that behavior, and so that has an implication for the sort of the basis of it in the genome. So there are other implications as well of that as well. So, but that's basically what they're advocating. They're advocating for using clades instead of model organisms, and then you can actually look at non-traditional model organisms, and you can understand sort of how these things evolve and emerge better than if you just look at a model organism and try to make that analogy. So they have a bunch of questions here. 10 questions in evolutionary neuroscience that model clades can help answer, and you can read about that more. Let me put the link to the papers in the chat, and if you need to request permission, please do. And I have questions. Jesse would like to speak. He has his hand up. Jesse, are you there?
Yeah, he's been trying to speak to you, and we weren't sure if maybe you weren't able to hear him. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Jesse's muted, apparently.
I can hear Jesse, but I cannot, I don't think that you're able to hear him.
No. Why don't you put it in the chat, Jesse? I don't know. Yeah, it's a little squirrely today. I don't know why. The Jitsi. So did anyone else have any questions?
It was an interesting talk. I just wanted to say I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Welcome. Yeah, again, like I'll give a longer version of that and put it on YouTube. I think it's important, I think it's interesting given some of the stuff that's been mentioned in the Slack recently, and Jesse's interested in human, like we talked about AI in terms of like simulating intelligence, if we can define intelligence, which is not always an easy thing to define, and then we also have this aspect of it. So Jesse says, yeah, I don't know if it's my thing or not, but basically just saying it's a cool paper. Yeah, it's good. Okay. So did anyone, I think we'll wrap it up for today. Did anyone have any other comments or questions? Okay, good. Next week, if you're interested in presenting next week, just let me know or bring it to the meeting and we'll cover it. Thank you again, Anusha, for your presentation. And have a good week. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.